and welcome to the Dynamic Duel Podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And in this episode, we are reviewing Batman Hush. It's a little late.
They kind of pushed up the date of the Blu-ray release, so we didn't foresee that happening. So a lot of you have probably already seen this movie.
Which is good.
Yeah, which means that we don't have to tell you to make sure to watch it before we give this spoiler review.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen the film, you're probably familiar with the storyline that came out in the comics in the early 2000s. It's sort of like a quintessential Batman storyline, not only because it featured so many of Batman's villains, but also because it had so many firsts. Like Batman's first fight with Superman in continuity, and things like that.
Yeah, and it had great art by Jim Lee and was written by Jeff Loeb. It was a great story. I'm glad they adapted it to film.
Yeah, it's about time. If you are familiar with the storyline from the comics but haven't yet seen the film, there's some surprises. So we'll talk about those later on in our review. Before that, we're going to break down the news items from the past week. There's two DC trailers. There's the Titans Season 2 trailer and a Wonder Woman Bloodlines trailer.
We also got word that Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who produced the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie, are also working on multiple live-action television projects for Sony involving characters from the Spider-Man universe.
Yeah, it's exciting. We'll be talking about that as well. As always, our segment times are in our episode description, so feel free to jump around the episode to wherever you want to listen, especially if this is old news to you. Just skip it.
We want to give a quick shout-out to Ben O'Neill, White Wolf Azul, Jamie Lynn 318, Marvel Forever 99, and Purring One for all giving us reviews on Apple Podcasts.
That's a huge number of reviews.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We're up to 137 ratings now on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. As you guys know, we're trying to get to 200 ratings because then Rotten Tomatoes will let Jonathan and my reviews of the Marvel and DC films count toward the official Rotten Tomatoes meter.
We're so close to getting to 200.
So if you guys could share this podcast with friends and family that you know would enjoy it, that would really help us promote the show to people who may also be able to give us ratings on Apple Podcasts and get us closer to that goal. We also want to thank everybody else that didn't leave us a review but did rate us.
Yeah,
because it's the ratings that really count.
Right.
The reviews are just kind of like a cherry on top.
They're so fun to read. It's always great to hear that you guys like the show as much as we enjoy making it. Thank you again.
But with that all out of the way,
quick to the No Prize.
A No Prize is an award Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award that we post on social media that Jonathan personally draws for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Now, last week's question was in regards to the Cloak and Dagger and Runaways television show crossover, and we asked, name two other Marvel television shows or two other DC television shows that you would have liked to have seen crossover that haven't already.
Or never did.
Or never did. Or never will. We got some great answers for this one. First honorable mention goes to CJ Kraft, who wants to see an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. / Hawkeye / Falcon and the Winter Soldier crossover event. I could definitely see all those worlds kind of coming together for a crossover event.
Honorable mention also goes to Dustin Belcom, who gave the answer of Doom Patrol / Swamp Thing. Now, I almost thought that this was going to happen because there was one episode in Doom Patrol where Cliff Steele, Robot Man, goes into the swamp searching for a crocodile. I was just waiting for Swamp Thing to pop out.
Why is he searching for a crocodile?
It's a long story. Don't worry about it.
All right. Honorable mention also goes to Jeff Miles Jr., who gave the answer of Cloak and Dagger meets The Gifted. And that would be a pretty good crossover because you could have Cloak and Dagger questioning whether or not they themselves are mutants. In the comics, it turns out that they're actually mutates. The drug that they took awoke like this mystical power within them.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that in our Cloak and Dagger versus Wonder Twins episode.
Yeah, go ahead and check that out if you guys want to learn more about Cloak and Dagger. That was a great answer.
Jacob Bell gave the answer of Arrow and Titans, which makes sense like tonally. I feel like Titans was pretty heavily inspired by the Arrowverse, which tends to be a little bit more grounded, so they would fit well together, I think.
Honorable mention also goes to Trevor Wallace, who gave the answer Runaways meets Cloak and Dagger meets Titans. So this is a Marvel and DC crossover, which is pretty cool.
Yep. He knows we would automatically gravitate towards this answer.
Oh yeah. I think that would be a great mashup considering all the characters are really young. But considering the tones of the Titans television show, I would almost want to see a Defenders Titans matchup just for those, similar tones.
Yeah, they're all TVMA, so it would probably make more sense for them to cross over.
Right.
Joel Seagrave gets honorable mention for his answer of Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and the X-Men 90s cartoon.
Right, and those were both animated television shows. I would probably amend this one from the 90s X-Men cartoon to the 2000s Wolverine and the X-Men cartoon, just because it had a very similar art style to Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes. But that's I'd love to see the X-Men and the Avengers team up in an animated crossover episode, kind of like how Spider-Man did with the 90s cartoon, the 90s Spider-Man show.
Oh yeah, that was great. That was a great crossover.
So much fun. Caleb Albers gets honorable mention for his answer of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Loki, which would be fantastic because he would have Phil Coulson getting revenge on Loki, possibly.
And he also gave the answer of the Wonder Woman 70s TV show, the Shazam show also from the 70s, Flash from the 90s, Batman from the 60s, and The Adventures of Superman from the 50s.
How cool would that be to see Linda Carter meet Adam West, meet George Reeves, meet John Wesley Shipp?
It would involve a lot of time travel.
Oh, yeah.
Because those shows weren't on at the same time.
Yeah, it's like a 40-year difference, so...
The Flash can do it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It would be really cool. Honorable mention goes to Matt Estes, who gave the answer of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. meets The Defenders. That would be fantastic. In the comics, Luke Cage and Jessica Jones and Daredevil and Iron Fist, they've all worked with S.H.I.E.L.D. multiple times. So yeah, that's fitting.
And our final honorable mention goes to John Spees, who gave the answer of Smallville and Birds of Prey. Now, they were on around the same time on the Warner Brothers network that used to exist. I'm sure they would have eventually crossed over.
If Birds of Prey had lasted long enough.
Yeah, if it lasted more than a season.
Right.
But we have two winners for this week's No Prize. One DC answer and one Marvel answer that we liked the most. The DC answer was given by Shannon Sanderson, who gave the answer of Constantine and Swamp Thing. Two great shows that were both cut down in their prime. Didn't even get to see a second season.
I thought we did get a second season of Constantine.
Well, Constantine appeared later on in Arrow and Legends of Tomorrow, but he didn't get to keep his own show. And it would have been great to see him in Swamp Thing because it was the Swamp Thing comic where the character of Constantine first appeared.
Oh. I'm giving the Marvel No Prize to Salvador Martinez, who gave the answer of Daredevil and Hawkeye. Now, Hawkeye, we know, is getting his own Disney Plus show later on in 2021, but I think he would pair really well with Charlie Cox's, Defenders Daredevil character. And what made this answer so compelling to me was the fact that Salvador Martinez elaborated that Bullseye would be the primary villain. So you would have Hawkeye and Daredevil teaming up to take on Bullseye from season 3 of Daredevil.
And that's fitting because for a while Bullseye was mimicking Hawkeye.
Right, he was Dark Avengers Hawkeye for a while. So I thought that was a great answer. Congrats to Salvador Martinez and Shannon Sanderson. You guys both win this episode's No Prize. If you, the listener, would like to win your own No Prize, go ahead and stay tuned to later on this episode when we ask another question of the week. And now that that's done,
on to the news. Okay, so this past week we got our first look at Titans Season 2, which of course is a show on the DC Universe platform. I've been looking forward to this for a while because it debuts pretty soon. Now that Swamp Thing is over, it starts early next month on September 6th.
Oh wow, that's really quick.
Yeah. So I hope this isn't the only trailer, and I don't think it will be, because the whole thing is under a minute long. It's only 53 seconds long.
Okay.
It starts off with Bruce Wayne talking with Dick Grayson, and we get to see Ian Glenn as the character of Bruce Wayne for the first time.
He's a little up there in years.
He is, and to me, it does not read as Bruce Wayne. It reads as Jorah Mormont from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, with the accent and everything, it's not how Bruce Wayne sounds when I'm reading the comic.
Yeah.
He's talking with Dick about his new Titans friends, which is quickly interrupted by Jason Todd jumping in front of a camera saying, "We're back, bitches!" Which is kind of funny, but I hate the character of Jason Todd. I think you're meant to dislike him.
He was always the annoying Robin. He didn't really become really cool until he was Red Hood.
Well, he's like really violent in this show.
Uh-huh.
Like he hates cops and he has no qualms about like snapping a cop's neck, like paralyzing him.
Dang.
It's just really brutal. So to see him here, I'm like, ugh, get the fuck off the screen, Jason. Move along. I want to see what Starfire looks like. Which we do get like a brief glimpse of. We don't get to see like her final costume that was revealed later on by Anna Diop on Instagram. But she's, like shooting out fire and stuff, so.
Starfire looks so much better this season than she did in the last one. She doesn't have like the weird like fur coat and, the prostitute outfit. Although Starfire's outfit from the comics is still kind of a prostitute outfit, but we're talking like a real prostitute as opposed to a space prostitute.
Well, in the comics, she's Tamaranian, an alien species that don't wear clothes. So story-wise, it makes sense. We do get to see a lot of costumes in this trailer, like way more than I thought we would. I think there's flashbacks to like an earlier version of the Titans, like the Teen Titans from the comics.
Yeah.
We get to see Wonder Girl. We get to see Aqualad. Of course, Hawk and Dove return. Their costumes always looked cool.
Yeah.
At the end of the first season of Titans, Robin burned his Robin outfit. So that kind of like paved the way for him eventually becoming Nightwing. So I think anytime you see him in his Robin outfit in this trailer, it's actually a flashback.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's a lot of quick cuts here. We get to see Ravager, who is Deathstroke's daughter. You can tell because like she's wearing an eye patch and she's just being like a martial arts badass. She's a pretty cool character from the comics. We also get to see Superboy, who I'm most looking forward to in this new season.
Yeah, and Krypto's in it too.
Yeah, and of course, both Krypto and Superboy were teased at the end of the last season.
Yeah.
It's going to be great to see those two together. Of the returning characters, I think the most interesting look now belongs to Raven. You know, she's paler, she has that like red jewel, and she has the purple hair. It's a good look. Of course, the trailer ends with a shot of Deathstroke. And I'm not sure who's talking. I think it's Jason Todd, who's like, oh my gosh, he seems like very concerned that we're seeing Deathstroke. When we finally get to see like the full reveal of him, he's wearing like a red light over one of his eyes.
Yeah, which seems very like Deadshot-y.
It bothers me. I thought the same thing. I was like, well, that's not Deathstroke, that's Deadshot.
I think the outfit that they revealed at the end of the Justice League movie that was worn by Joe Manganiello was a much better costume design.
They should have just used that costume, honestly. It's not like anyone else is using it.
Right.
Now, the actor who's playing Deathstroke is Esai Morales, who you may remember from the movie La Bamba.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes. The brother.
Yeah, the alcoholic brother. I think he's going to do a fantastic job in the role. He's going to have a hard time topping Manu Bennett's interpretation of the character in Arrow Season 2. That was a fantastic interpretation. I'm really looking forward to seeing him and Superboy. I'm just looking forward to all of Season 2. I think it's going to be great.
In other news, we learned this past week that Phil Lord and Chris Miller have been contracted by Sony to develop a handful of television series based on Spider-Man characters. Now, Phil Lord and Chris Miller were the minds behind Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. They didn't direct it, they produced it, but it was pretty much their brainchild. And while I love that movie so much, my first reaction to this news was just, no, don't do that. Because I have a feeling that they're going to take a lot of these like Spidey D-list characters and then start making series about them that either people won't care about or will interfere with the Marvel Cinematic version of Spider-Man, Tom Holland.
Exactly. It's going to lead to confusion. The same confusion that we talked about happening between the Flash TV show and the live-action film of The Flash.
Right.
Now, that really hasn't happened yet, but we talked about like brand confusion. When you go to the toy store and you want to buy a toy for your like nephew that's of the Flash, you may get confused as to which version of the Flash that kid likes.
Right, exactly. And now we don't know if that's going to happen in this case because we don't know what shows they're going to be developing. You know, this is just announced. These shows are a long ways away from being on the air. And we don't even know if they have the MCU's blessing, like if Marvel Studios or Marvel Television has any part of this deal, which I assume that they don't. I think Sony is just doing their own thing here and trusting Phil Lord and Chris Miller to put their genius to work. This whole concept may work if they decide to explore, you know, the Spider-Verse or just explore characters that they don't ever foresee interacting with Tom Holland's Spider-Man character in the MCU. If they can pull that off, I would actually look forward to these series. They said a handful of series. I don't know how much that is. That's probably like 2 to 4, I'm guessing. I don't know how many television shows you can hold in a hand. But I'm actually hoping it's closer to about 2 shows.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see which characters they choose. And that brings us to our question of the week.
What character from the Spider-Man comics do you most want to see Phil Lord and Chris Miller adapt into a live-action television series? Post your answer to our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media.
In our last bit of news, we got our first look at Wonder Woman Bloodlines, the animated film that's coming out later this year. We don't have a hard release date, but it's assuming that it'll come out sometime in October, and we'll be reviewing it once it does.
The movie actually looks pretty cool. It seems to kind of retread part of the same story that the Wonder Woman film did, but then it jumps to the modern era, and it's kind of like Wonder Woman versus like the best of her rogues gallery.
Yeah, this looks to be like a much different storyline than I thought it was going to be. I thought this was going to be an adaptation of Brian Azzarello's initial 52 run, where she learns that she's a daughter of Zeus. So I'm kind of disappointed that it doesn't seem to be that, but you're right, it does look like this is a mixture between an origin story and some kind of conflict set in like the modern time of the DC animated movie universe. So the trailer starts off with Steve Trevor crashing his fighter jet near Themyscira, and he gets saved by Diana. It looks like they hit it off pretty early on, and Wonder Woman makes it pretty clear that she is going to be leaving with him to go save man's world, which her mother doesn't like, but of course we know what happens there. What's interesting about this part is that Diana is wearing like her traditional Wonder Woman costume, with like the yellow eagle breastplate and the yellow tiara. She doesn't wear that in the DC animated movie universe. She wears more of like her new 52 getup that's all silver.
Do you prefer the gold or the silver?
I absolutely prefer the gold.
I don't know. I kind of like the silver.
I know a lot of people like the blue top. It's more like a sleeveless turtleneck. I don't even know what to call it, but it goes all the way up to her neck.
Uh-huh. I mean, I think it looks a little bit more fierce, a little bit more practical and battle ready. Her breasts aren't ready to pop out.
I'm going to mention this later on in our Batman Hush review, but the character designs they have for the DC Animated Universe superheroes are very hit and miss for me. The Wonder Woman one is all right. Again, I would much prefer to see her traditional, like, Gal Gadot costume.
Yeah, that is a great design.
I love that one. I love that one.
Well, that's more bronze than gold or silver. I think they went with the silver design in the new 52 to kind of, like, match her silver bracelets.
Yeah, I agree. Plus, it kind of steered away from, like, the whole red, blue, and yellow color scheme that Superman already has.
Yeah, yeah.
The trailer then flashes forward to the modern day.
Yeah, and then we get to see some of the villains that she'll be facing off in this movie, including Cheetah, there's Giganta, there's Dr. Poison.
Yeah.
Who's the vulture-looking lady?
Silver Swan.
Oh, okay.
She's actually like a descendant of Ares. What do you think of the character designs of the villains?
I thought they were fine.
I thought Cheetah was way too buff. I'm just going to say that.
Cheetah should be buff because not a lot of people know just how strong Cheetah is. They think she's like Tigra from the Marvel Universe. Cheetah is actually about almost as strong as Wonder Woman in the comics. So if you have a bulky Cheetah character, you know that she can actually physically go toe-to-toe with Wonder Woman.
Yeah, and that's probably something that most people will learn in the upcoming Wonder Woman 1984 film, where, you know, she'll be played by Kristen Wiig. What's interesting from a story perspective from this trailer is that they seem to be borrowing something from Greg Rucka's Rebirth arc in the comics, where once Diana left Themyscira, she never actually returned. Like, those were implanted memories from the gods. It was all very strange and interesting.
Yeah, it seems like here she's trying to get back to Themyscira to prevent a war between her rogues gallery and the Themyscirans. And that looks like the big climactic battle. But she has to find her way back. And so she's like consulting this grail or this chalice of liquid or something.
Yeah.
Trying to get some kind of vision from that.
I do hope that once the film is released, they work a little bit better at syncing up the voices with the characters, because in this trailer, the animation does not match up. As great as Rosario Dawson's voice as the character is, all of the performances seem like really passionate, and the characters are just like very flat, like no expression.
Well, I would agree that's the case for a lot of the DC animated universe artwork in general. The characters are very wooden.
Yeah. I would agree that that was definitely the case in Batman Hush.
Yeah.
Well, let's get on to that review. I think that does it for all of the news this week.
Yeah, can't wait to discuss it. It was a lot of fun. Let's get into it.
Alright, so Batman Hush is DC's latest installment in its animated movie universe, and of course, it's based on the 2002 comic arc written by Jeff Loeb and drawn by comic superstar Jim Lee. As always, this is a spoiler review, and given the mystery nature of the storyline, I highly recommend seeing the film before listening any further.
I would even recommend reading the Hush story arc from the comics before seeing the film, because it just kind of adds to your enjoyment of the liberties taken with the story a little bit more.
That's true. That's true. I mean, even if you've read the comics that the film is based on, there are some big surprises here that I imagine you won't want to spoil for yourself. The film has been available to stream since Comic-Con, and it's been on Blu-ray since August 6th. It was released, as we mentioned earlier, a week early, which is why this review was scheduled so late. But as of today, you can stream it on the DC Universe app for free with their 7-day trial period. Find a way to see it. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, if you like Batman. If you like that sort of thing.
Yeah, who doesn't like Batman? Everybody likes Batman. Even Marvel fans like Batman.
Do we, though?
Yeah. You know in your heart you like Batman. Now, it's not a perfect film. Like, the cheap animation in DC's recent animated films still makes me cringe sometimes.
Yeah, there's not enough frames in some shots.
No, yeah. It's passable. The best thing about this film is that it ends on a really strong note. Now, I'm surprised this wasn't adapted to animation sooner. It's kind of the perfect Batman storyline in that it's a mystery that features a wide sampling of Batman's rogues gallery, second only to probably The Long Halloween, which was also written by Jeff Loeb, but it's never been clear as to whether that storyline is actually canon.
The Hush storyline is also a pretty decent mystery, too.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to see Batman actually be a detective, you know?
Yeah, he is billed as the world's greatest detective. Now, Hush was canon in the comics up until the New 52, and it was notable because it not only featured the first in-continuity fight between Batman and Superman, but also because it teased the return of Jason Todd, and it was when Batman revealed his secret identity to Catwoman. I collected the entire run when it came out. It was a big deal, though I'd be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed by the storyline by the time it was done. You and I were both avid readers of Wizard magazine in the early aughts, which is where all comic book readers got their news before the internet took over. So I knew going into the Hush comic that the storyline was going to feature a bunch of Batman's rogues and introduce a new villain known as Hush. Now, the character of Bruce Wayne's childhood friend, Dr. Thomas Elliot, was introduced pretty early in the Hush storyline.
Yeah, and we all figured that he was going to be Hush anyway.
Yeah, everyone reading it pretty much thought that he was going to be Hush. And though Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee tried to pull a fast one on us by having the Joker kill Dr. Elliot halfway through the series, by the end, sure enough, Dr. Elliot was Hush. And the reason he became a villain was basically because he was an entitled brat who hated Bruce Wayne's father, Thomas, for saving Dr. Elliot's parents from a car accident when Dr. Elliot was a boy. It was kind of weak.
Yeah, and I was never really a huge fan of the design of the character of Hush. He reminded me a lot of Negative Man from Doom Patrol.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're interchangeable. Yeah, the character of Hush really fell flat, and he was never successfully used as a Batman villain ever again, like, in my opinion. So I had mixed feelings going into this movie, figuring that I'd be disappointed by the end of it because of Hush's identity reveal. But the film tricked me in a way that literally almost had me standing up from my seat going, what? We learned that Hush wasn't Dr. Elliot in this film. It was, spoiler alert, the Riddler, which was so perfect. Because one of the best things about the Hush storyline in the comics was how it elevated the character of the Riddler from like an annoying C-list villain to a dangerous mastermind, incredible threat to Batman.
Because he found out during that storyline that Bruce Wayne was Batman.
Right. They took that aspect of the character in this film and like amplified it, making the Riddler the most badass he's ever been in any medium ever. Even, dare I say, the Arkham video games.
What do you mean? How is he in the games?
In the games, he's kind of like Jigsaw from like the Saw movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It was a great interpretation. But while that may be like the most maybe successful adaptation, this is the most badass the Riddler has ever been, in my opinion, in any medium. This film.
What about Jim Carrey?
Shut up.
A character that I was surprised to see that was featured so prominently within this storyline was Catwoman, because I don't remember her being so involved in the comics of this story arc.
I think it's been a long while since you read the comic, because she was pretty heavily involved in the comic.
Was she?
Yeah.
So she was like fighting crime alongside Batman, like teaming up against Two-Face, and they were like boning in the shower and all that stuff?
I don't remember the boning in the shower. And yeah, you may be right. They may not have teamed up in the comic, but she was still a major player.
Okay, because I almost felt like the actual Hush storyline took a back seat to this Batman-Catwoman love story. And this movie almost could have been called Batman and Catwoman.
Oh, I agree. Like, you could definitely classify this film as a mystery, but I think at its core, it's a romance. This film is really the answer to why Batman and Catwoman can't be together. And a majority of the scenes were dedicated to exploring their relationship. But I think it works because that relationship, like especially now when they almost just got married in the comics, this film seems a little bit more relevant than probably would have been a few years ago. Their relationship is a fascinating one because it's essentially the story of this guy who has dedicated his entire life to this cause and a woman who's essentially against that cause in some respects, trying to win his love and affection and attention.
Star-crossed lovers doomed from the start.
Exactly. Let's get into the character breakdown so we can talk a little bit more about Batman and Catwoman. Starting off with Batman. So Batman was voiced by Jason O'Mara, as in past films of the DC animated movie universe. This is surprisingly the first solo Batman film I've seen in that universe. Like, I haven't seen Bad Blood or Batman vs. Robin. I've just seen him in films like Justice League Dark or Throne of Atlantis. So my first take on Jason O'Mara's Bruce Wayne is that he sucks.
Really?
Yeah, like it makes me really wish that Kevin Conroy was voicing the character because he's really good at making Batman sound menacing and Bruce Wayne sound charming. To me, there was no difference between Jason O'Mara's Batman and Bruce Wayne voice, and that bothered me.
Yeah. I mean, he's a little bit flat in his delivery. I could see that.
It's one note. It's the same thing.
It's hard for me to say that, though, because I really like Jason O'Mara as an actor. He had a prominent spot on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season 4, I think it was, where he played the Patriot. And he was great in that show, so I'm kind of a fan of his.
No, just Kevin Conroy all day, every day.
Yeah.
Another thing that bothered me about this Batman was his costume change halfway through the film.
Yeah.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, I found the character design in this animated universe, really hit or miss. And I think the blue cape and cowl homage to Jim Lee's interpretation of the character was a mistake. Because the starting design of Batman, the same one that he's used in the past films, is really good.
Yeah, the black and gray outfit.
Yeah, while the blue cape probably makes the character look more heroic, it doesn't make sense for the character, I think.
Yeah, Batman should never be wearing blue.
He's like a stealthy ninja. He needs to be wearing black, in my opinion. And that's what he was wearing in his first appearance in Detective Comics, was black and gray. I mean, he also had purple gloves, but...
Really?
But his cape was black.
Okay.
What they did get right about Batman in this film, and this is probably more important than anything, is his character. The conflict he has with starting a relationship with Catwoman and the drive to find out who's manipulating events behind the scenes, his code of honor and the sense of justice and the intellect, all of that is on display here, and it's all done really well. And I think the filmmakers have to give a lot of credit to Jeff Loeb for that.
Yeah, line delivery notwithstanding, his dialogue as a character was pretty damn good.
Yeah. As was Catwoman's.
Yeah, I didn't know that was Jennifer Morrison. I like Jennifer Morrison.
I didn't honestly care for her voice work either.
Jeez, you just don't like anybody, do you?
The sultry voice of Selena Kyle I hear in my head when I read the comics is not the same voice I heard coming through my speakers when we watched this movie.
What does her voice sound like? Let me hear it.
Okay. No. No, I'm not going to do that. Meow. Perfect. I hate that.
Gross.
Why did I even try? It doesn't sound like that either. I don't know what I was trying to do. Eartha Kitt. I don't know. Moving on. In my head, she sounds more like Michelle Pfeiffer, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Just super sultry sex kitten. A voice like velvet. And to touch on character design again, hers was just horrible.
I did not like her mask.
No, her tiny goggles on her long facial structure made her look like her eyes were too far apart. And I think the animators had a really challenging time with her all-black costume. Because, her contour lines weren't visible. And that forced them to add, some dimension to the outfit using, tints of grayish purple, unsuccessfully.
It made her costume look super shiny, but also out of place with her surroundings.
Exactly. All that said, I think it was easy to identify with Catwoman's viewpoint throughout the film, as easy as it was for Batman, especially at the end when she realized that she and Batman couldn't be together.
Yeah, that was kind of heartbreaking, because it was but you guys belong together.
But do they? Do they now?
They do so well for each other. They make each other happy. He's just being a stubborn dick.
I think both of them are unwilling to compromise, and that's never a good sign in a relationship, unfortunately.
The sex is probably fantastic, though.
I think that's what it is. I think they're just both really athletic and flexible. And I think it's a sex thing.
They're both super physically compatible without being morally compatible.
Which you can't maintain
Right.
that kind of relationship. So yeah, I guess the best thing they could be is just friends with benefits, since neither of them are getting married. But I don't want that for Batman. I want something more for him. Moving on to Nightwing. I didn't care for Nightwing's voice either. But, he had some of the best action scenes. And most importantly, his character also brought a humanity to Batman in a way that only Dick Grayson can. Like, he's the closest thing that Batman has to a family member or friend. And Dick prevents Batman from getting too serious. You really get the sense that, like, Nightwing is happy with Batman's relationship with Catwoman.
Yeah.
It's like, that's healthy. That's good for you, Batman.
It's like seeing your friend finally settle down or something. Speaking of the action, though, it was like they saved all of the frames in the movie for Nightwing's action scenes, because the action was fluid and it was well choreographed. It was really well done.
Yeah, like seeing him doing like a spinning kick handstand, that was really cool. And it's true to like how Nightwing probably would fight. It's just very acrobatic. Mm-hmm. So Commissioner Gordon, this voice cast was just horrible. Why couldn't they get Bryan Cranston for the voice again?
What?
He did the voice of James Gordon in Batman Year One, and it was perfect.
Oh.
It was so good.
Yeah, that would be good.
I don't have too much to say about Commissioner Gordon other than he plays a pretty critical role in the film and in the comics in reminding Batman about his code of honor and how he needs to keep it no matter what.
Batman's such a hypocrite. He was so ready to break his code of honor when it came to killing the Joker, but he wanted to let the Riddler live at the end.
Well, right. Commissioner Gordon was there to remind him that he's better than that, that he should not stoop to their level. And I think in part that's why Batman tried to save the Riddler at the end.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So Superman, this was good voice acting. Jerry O'Connell did a great job as the character, as he has in past films. And Lois Lane was also voiced by Rebecca Romijn again, and that was great. She's fantastic as that character.
Yeah, I mentioned I was a fan of O'Connell's back in our Death of Superman and Reign of the Superman review. It was nice to see those characters again.
Yeah, DC doesn't have much continuity going in terms of like the live action film universe, so it's good to see returning characters come for these animated films, even if they're small parts.
Right.
Like, that's great to see.
Yeah, and Rainn Wilson returned for Lex Luthor as well.
Yeah, Lex Luthor has kind of like an ally role in this film. He helps Batman track down Poison Ivy, and they mention how he joined the Justice League at the end of the Reign of the Superman film. I'm still curious which direction they're going with that decision. Batgirl also has a cameo, kind of taking the role that the Huntress had in the comics. I'm not sure why they did that. I guess Batgirl is just more popular than the Huntress. And Robin, Damian Wayne, makes an appearance, calling Catwoman a trollop and telling his dad to make sure he uses protection.
Dude, that was a little awkward.
That was.
Like, I surely don't want any more of you.
It's kind of like one of those instances where I feel like the writers of these animated films interject sort of like this crass humor and like foul language just to make it PG-13.
Yeah, that as well as like brief sexuality. I didn't get to see the actual love scene between Batman and Selina because all of a sudden your daughters ran down to the basement where we were watching the movie and you're like, oh shit! And you like, you had to like skip ahead like 30 seconds or something like that.
I'm not sure why they would feel the need to interject that into the animated films. Moving on to the villains of the film, starting with Hush. Of course, for most of the film, I assumed he was Dr. Tommy Elliot, and I just kind of rolled my eyes whenever Dr. Elliot was on screen, taking note of the obvious foreshadowing they placed in his scenes to set up his reveal as Hush.
Well, they did set up some foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Like as he was walking out of Bruce Wayne's hospital room, and he had like that weird sideways glance.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I saw that. Duh.
That wasn't subtle at all.
I know. You guys really don't see it yet already? We were all duped, though. It was the Riddler. Dr. Elliot really did die. And so did the Riddler at the end. Like, I thought I knew things, but it turned out I knew nothing. And I really liked this film because of that.
It did a good job of subverting expectations.
Absolutely. And it made the character of Hush, like, way cooler to me than he ever was in the comics.
Yeah, I mean, despite the fact that there was that great reveal that the Riddler was Hush, I still feel like the character of Hush was still underutilized in the movie. He had barely any screen time. He was like just standing there mysterious. Like if you didn't know who he was, I think you would just be so frustrated at the lack of development that the character was getting.
Oh, absolutely. If it would have stayed as him being Tommy Elliot, I agree. I think it would have been really disappointing.
I remember even in the comic series, they would do flashbacks between Bruce Wayne and Thomas Elliot that were like done in watercolor or something like that.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of when the Batman Ninja movie had their little interlude with the Joker that was done in watercolor.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
And I thought it would be so cool if this movie did something similar to that in developing the main villain. Of course, we know they didn't do that now because Thomas Elliot really had nothing to do with this story.
It was all the Riddler. And I love the interpretation they did of the Riddler with like his brain surgery scar.
That was in the shape
like
of a question mark. Yeah.
Badass. That was really cool. And you know, the Riddler had like a reason to hate Thomas Elliot and kill him because he wasn't able to successfully remove the tumor from his brain. I think the writers of this film did a really, really good job of trimming the fat that was in the comic.
Yeah, it was lean. I mean, it was a 12-issue comic that they cut down into about 80 minutes. And it didn't feel like there was a big chunk of story missing or anything like that.
No, it felt faithful. It felt faithful, except for, you know, the twist at the end. But again, I think that is an improvement upon the comic. Moving on to Bane, he took the place of Killer Croc from the comics. And I'm not sure why they did that. Like, Bane is a fantastic villain, but I think he needs to be used sparingly. Kind of like Doomsday. You know, like, Bane is, of course, famous for defeating Batman and breaking his back. But when you have him popping up frequently and consistently getting defeated, their initial victory loses its impact. And I always hate when Bane is treated like as this brute muscle, because he's actually really intelligent.
Yeah, but here he was, like, suffering from addiction to the new super venom that Riddler gave him. So he was kind of acting out of character anyway.
Yeah, a lot of the villains were, and that's sort of what made Batman curious about everything that was going on. You know, Bane didn't speak much in this film. He was voiced by Adam Guilford, who also did the voice of Clayface. And that voice work was fine, I thought. I thought the voice acting for Poison Ivy, Harley Quinn, and the Joker was also fantastic, and their roles were pretty much identical to what they did in the comics. Like, the beating the Joker takes was just as long and borderline uncomfortable as it was on the page.
Yeah, I remember that being intense.
And it always gets me how the Joker's just like, stop, Batman, stop. Stop me if you've heard this one before. I'm innocent. Such great writing. I want to move on to the highlights from the film. The film starts off with Bruce Wayne at like this elegant party, shunning his guests so he could like talk into this extra large Bluetooth earpiece.
Yeah, that was a little douchebaggy.
Yeah, what kind of douchebag wears a Bluetooth with a tuxedo?
Bruce Wayne was that guy.
Of course, Bruce sees Selina Kyle wearing a very revealing dress. And he introduces Selina to his childhood friend, the renowned brain surgeon, Dr. Thomas Elliot. In the comic, the storyline starts off where he's trying to rescue the kid who is ransomed. But that's the next scene in this film. Bruce leaves the party when he learns that Bane has kidnapped the son of a billionaire and is holding him for ransom. Batman saves the boy from Bane, and in the aftermath, he notices Bane has a leaf on him. And Lady Shiva of the League of Assassins makes an appearance to ask Batman if he knows of a recent unauthorized use of a Lazarus pit.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Did that happen in the comics? That didn't happen in the comics.
Lady Shiva was in the storyline from the comics, but I think it was actually Ra's al Ghul who reached out to Batman to see if he knew anything about the Lazarus pit.
Oh, okay.
Batman realizes the ransom money was stolen by Catwoman, and he chases after her, getting his grapple cable severed by the villain Hush mid-chase. And Batman falls from an insane height onto his head, fracturing his skull. That was brutal.
Yeah, that was pretty bad, like all the blood pouring from his face. But we got that cool cameo by Batgirl.
Yeah, Batgirl and Catwoman both kind of saved Batman from like a group of street thugs as he laid unconscious, after which Catwoman delivered the ransom money to Poison Ivy, who was controlling her, and Batgirl takes Batman to the Batcave. Bruce is taken to the hospital, and Dr. Elliot removes the skull fragments from Bruce's brain. It was that bad. And as Bruce Wayne recovers, he gets a new suit and goes to Blackgate Penitentiary to interrogate Bane, only to find him being transferred by Amanda Waller for her Suicide Squad. Whatever the next Suicide Squad animated film to come out will be, I'm sure Bane will be a part of it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Bane escapes, though, and leads Batman to Poison Ivy's abandoned lair, to where Catwoman has returned. Batman helps Amanda Waller recapture Bane, and Batman and Catwoman agree to team up to find Poison Ivy, which they find her in Metropolis, where she reveals that she's gained control over Superman. Batman and Superman fight, and it takes Catwoman dropping Lois Lane off of a building for Superman to shake his hypnosis.
No, I thought this fight played out a little bit weaker than it did in the comic. I don't know if
agree.
it was a matter of timing or if it was just Jim Lee's art, but I wasn't as impressed. I did like how they used like kryptonite lipstick on Poison Ivy, and that was the way she was able to control Superman.
Yeah, in the comics, he had like a laurel kind of like wreath around his neck. I don't think they ever explicitly said that she kissed him. But no, Jim Lee's pacing is some of the best in the industry. And I agree, the fight felt much more frantic and fast-paced in the comic. I did think it was a little messed up of Batman to pull out like these spiked knuckle dusters made of kryptonite, as opposed to his kryptonite ring that he had in the comic.
Yeah, this is a lot more deadly.
Dang. Batman, Superman, and Catwoman confront Poison Ivy, and she reveals that Hush is behind everything. Bruce and Selina go on a date together with Dr. Elliot to the opera, where Harley Quinn, who's being manipulated by Hush, tries to kill Bruce Wayne. Catwoman stops Harley, but Batman stumbles upon Dr. Elliot dead at the Joker's feet. And it takes Commissioner Gordon to stop Batman from killing the Joker. After Dr. Elliot's funeral, Batman deduces that Hush knows that he's Bruce Wayne. After capturing the Riddler during a robbery, Batman encounters Hush, who warns Batman that he's going after those closest to him. So of course Batman goes to Catwoman, asking her to leave town for her protection, but she refuses. He reveals his secret identity as Bruce Wayne to her, and the two become a crime-fighting romantic couple. That was kind of cool to see.
That was really cool. Like, they were going up against Two-Face, and they went up against the Penguin. There's like almost a whole movie in there by itself.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would love to see that. So while investigating Dr. Elliot's office, Batman discovers one of his patients was a man named Arthur Wynn, who had an inoperable brain tumor.
And Arthur Wynn was the creator of the crossword puzzle. So Batman was able to deduce that the patient of Thomas Elliot's was the Riddler.
Right. Detectivity. Meanwhile, Nightwing and Catwoman investigate a graveyard break-in and are attacked by the Scarecrow.
Yeah, and the break-in was Dr. Elliot's grave.
Though in the comics, this was actually Jason Todd's grave. Like,
oh, really?
His body was removed from the grave. And when Batman showed up on the scene, that's when he fought Jason Todd.
Oh, wow.
Now, that turned out to be Clayface in the comics. And they kind of did a twist on that for this film. Because while Catwoman and Nightwing, face the Scarecrow, Batman and Commissioner Gordon are interrogating the Riddler, since Batman has deduced, like you mentioned, that he was Arthur Wynn and the one who used the Lazarus Pit. The Riddler reveals that he's Hush, and that he knows Batman's identity, right when Batman figures out that he's actually interrogating Clayface, posing as the Riddler.
But how did he know that?
Because he's Batman.
That was the one thing I didn't get. Batman, slits the Riddler's throat, and I'm like, oh, dang, he's gone evil! Right when the Riddler was about to say that he's Bruce Wayne.
It was pretty shocking.
It was shocking, yeah. But, it turns out it was Clayface.
I'm sure he knew just based on, the Riddler's mannerisms. Clayface is a talented actor, but Batman's a better detective.
The fight against Clayface was pretty fun, I thought.
That was fun. Clayface didn't say much, so it was really fun to have the Joker there, just adding his own colorful commentary to the whole battle.
Right. And when Clayface swallowed up Jim Gordon, that was kind of scary.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
And it's always great to see how Batman can use his environment to take down foes who are more powerful than he is.
Yeah.
Of course, in this instance, using a fire hose. So after Batman defeated Clayface, he tracked the Riddler, a.k.a. Hush, to a steelworks where Catwoman was being held hostage.
And I really like how the Riddler was able to kind of reverse engineer Batman's detective work, revealing that he knew exactly how Batman would find out their location. And it's not the Riddler left a huge amount of clues.
Yeah, he didn't really leave any clues, except for the whole Arthur Wynn thing. But it's amazing how from that, Batman, such a badass detective, was able to deduce everything else.
Yeah.
So Batman and the Riddler fight in a great face-off. The Riddler has never been this capable in a fight.
Yeah, when is the Riddler such an awesome martial artist?
Ever since the Lazarus Pit. And it was cool that his cane was a weapon. Because it's always been like a remote control or a club. But I don't remember ever seeing it have a blade on it.
Yeah, that's deadly.
As they're fighting, the Riddler realizes that the effects of the Lazarus Pit are wearing off, and these explosions tear the surrounding machinery apart, and in the chaos, the Riddler nearly falls to his death, though he's saved by Batman with a grapple line. Now, not wanting Batman to die and indifferent to the Riddler's life, Catwoman cut the grapple line.
Yeah, sending Riddler to his death.
which was hardcore.
Yeah, and it pissed Batman off, but
Yeah.
she saved both their lives by doing that.
Exactly. Batman and Catwoman escape the building just as it explodes, and they decide to go their separate ways after Catwoman realizes that saving people, even bad people, is more important to Batman than his life or any kind of life with her.
Savage.
That was really well written.
Yeah.
Like, I was just so heartbroken during that moment.
I was just thinking that Batman needs to get his ass to a hospital because he probably needs a shit ton of stitches to close up those wounds caused by the Riddler's staff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, emergency vehicles like show up on the scene right as Catwoman flees, and that sort of ends the film. But this ending really hit home for me because I was one of those people who were really upset by the fact that Batman and Catwoman didn't get married recently in the comics.
You were?
Yeah, it's like, Superman can find happiness in marriage, so can Aquaman. Why can't Batman? And this film,
Because he's Batman.
This film answers that question in a way that I hadn't really been able to rationalize prior for myself. I think everyone who's super angry at Tom King right now, the writer of the whole arc involving Catwoman and Batman's marriage, they just need to watch this movie and chill out. Overall, I think this ending really saved the film for me. These changes that they made to the original comic storyline, making the Riddler the villain Hush, and making me realize why Batman and Catwoman can't be together. It made me really, really like this film. Again, it's not perfect, but I think it's 4 out of 5 stars.
Did this movie make any changes to the comic book storyline that you thought were for the worse?
They did make it so that Bruce Wayne was much less paranoid than he was in the comics. Because like in the comics, Thomas Elliot operated on his brain. Catwoman was kissing him all the time, and she had been involved with Poison Ivy. So like he didn't know exactly like if he could trust his own mind. That whole aspect was missing from this film.
And Scarecrow also played a hand in the comics in manipulating Bruce Wayne, right?
Yeah, that's right. His fear toxin was manipulating Batman and those closest to him as well.
Interesting.
I do think that aspect probably would have made this film better, but I understand why the writers kind of cut it.
It's not the deepest of Batman films. You look at a movie like Under the Red Hood or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was much more well done on a psychological level.
Absolutely.
As the best Batman movies should be. This one was almost more of like a popcorn movie.
I can see that.
Just kind of like a greatest hits of Batman's rogues, which sounds enjoyable in itself. And this movie was enjoyable. While I don't think that this movie was an exceptional entry in the DC animated universe, I thought it was done well enough and quite a fun watch, I think. So I'd give it 4 stars as well.
I'm glad ultimately that the film was made because I think a lot more people watch these movies than actually read the comics. So allowing people the opportunity to experience this storyline in some medium or another is better than not having it because it is kind of a classic now. It's a contemporary classic storyline.
Yeah. Well, I think that does it for the review. If you guys have seen the film, go ahead and reach out to us and let us know what you thought about Batman Hush, either on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or you can email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. Of course, you can find links to all of our social media profiles by visiting our website, dynamicduel.com.
And if you visit our website, you'll also notice a link to our merchandise store, which is on TeePublic. If you use that link, you'll get a discount on your first order of any of our merchandise. We use our no price art on products such as t-shirts and mugs and cell phone cases and pillows
And laptop cases.
and a whole bunch of cool stuff. So definitely check our store out.
In our next episode, that'll be a duel episode, and we will find out who would win in a fight between the primary villain of this Hush movie, the Riddler, and Arcade, the X-Men villain.
We have something planned. Definitely make sure to check back in next week. In the meantime, please don't forget to share, subscribe, rate, and review our podcast on whatever platform you are listening to us on. It goes a long way in helping us promote our show.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, especially if you can rate us on Apple Podcasts, as we mentioned earlier, so we could get to 200 ratings. But I think that's everything, so we'll talk to you guys next week.
Up, and away.
True believers.